let's move into the first one, and that would be maintain problem list. So we'll see that we need to maintain an up-to-date problem list. So, kind of redundant because they also say of current and active diagnoses. So we want to make sure that the information is as fresh as possible and that it's maintained in the certified EHR. The measure for this, and so this is one where we have a denominator and numerator, is that more than 80% of the unique patients, there's that unique patient showing up as a definition, admitted to the eligible hospital, inpatient or, and then we have the emergency department. So again, important to understand which patients are counted from the ED, have at least one entry or an indication that no problems are known. So that's one entry is no problems are known. And that there are no exclusions for the maintained problem list, that the problem list has to be addressed by all hospitals. Okay, so what are the attestation requirements? And again, the CMS has issued its attestation website, and we know that we have to enter not a percent, but we actually have to enter the denominator and numerator values for all of the core and the selected menu objectives that require a measurement. And so the denominator is going to be the number of unique patients admitted to the hospital or inpatient during the reporting period. And so for year one, that's that 90-day contiguous period during the fiscal year. For the numerator, we need to identify those patients that we recorded at least one entry in their problem list, or that no problems existed, and that has to be as structured data. And we'll see in a moment a qualifier for what structured data has to be input. And again, the resulting percentage has to be greater than 80% of those unique patients have to have had this structured data recorded during the reporting period. And if you do all that, you're going to be able to qualify for funding for this particular requirement. As you know, you have to meet all core and the 5 selected objectives along with using certified EHR technology in order to qualify for funding. If you only hit, say, 18 of the 19, you won't get paid anything. So it's all or nothing. So that additional information I was referring to relative to the structured data is shown on the next slide, and that has to do with what are the standards. We talked about structured data. So structured, there is some sense of standard or at least coding that would be necessary. And in the ruling, or the final rule that came out from the Office of the National Coordinator regarding standards and implementation standards and certification criteria, the standards that were adopted were ICD-9 or SNOMED CT. So those are the two that were identified as being required and being able to be supported by the certified software. So they'll need to be able. So you'll need to be able to maintain the problem list using those standards, and that's the first stage, and I'm sure that will evolve under stage 2. There was discussion about ICD-10, et cetera. So depending on the take-up of that coding, it may well be at least included in addition. Don't know if it'll replace any of those mentioned here in stage 1. Okay, so that was problem with. So moving to the second core objective that we want to cover, and that would be your clinical quality measures, needing to be able to report those to CMS, and the measure is that you successfully report the clinical quality measures that are identified in a manner specified by CMS. So for 2011, there is no electronic submission of those quality measures yet, but under subsequent years, it's anticipated that that will occur. So that's what they mean by in the manner specified by CMS. And then, are there any exclusions to this? No. All hospitals have to report these quality measures. There are 15 quality measures that have been identified by CMS. There are separate objectives for each one of those. We're not covering those in this course. We're covering the, I guess, if you want to call it the umbrella objective, of the fact that you have to report those quality measures to CMS. So this is a straightforward attestation, and you are just stating that you are able to report to CMS in the manner specified, and since it's not electronic, you're just answering yes, that you're going to, you are able to generate those quality measures and report them as CMS is specified. So the providers permitted, they're not required to limit the measure of this objective to those patients whose records are maintained in the certified EHR software. So what that says is that you do have to have the data coming from your certified EHR software in order to qualify. If you have the data maintained in an uncertified data source, that's not going to, you're not going to be compliant from the fact that you have to be using certified EHR technology. So I know some hospitals are taking the approach of saying, well, we have a custom-built data store, a BI, a business intelligence tool, a data warehouse. We may need to get that certified, and you can do that, certify the module for quality reporting in order to meet that point about the fact that you have to have certified technology as the data source. The testing means that you're able to complete the clinical quality measures, and you're also able to attest that the numerator and denominators and exclusions for individual quality measures are able to be reported. That's what you're attesting to. And finally, there is a source, and there are electronic specifications for all the quality measures. Again, we're not covering individually those 15 quality measures, but each of those quality measures have an electronic specification that includes each data field that is needed in order to compute and ensure that you're gathering the appropriate data for that quality measure. And there's a reference here on where to get that specification. It's hopefully you can see the screen, www.cms.gov/quality measures /03_ electronic specifications.asp, and then the # top of page. So that'll take you to, I think it's a HITSP document that has all of the quality measures electronically defined so that you can use those and ensure that you're compliant. All right, the third objective for today that we're covering is another core objective, clinical decision support. So what are you being asked to do? Implement one clinical decision support rule related to a high priority hospital condition, along with the ability to track compliance with that rule. So what that means is, I believe, it's up to the hospital to decide which rule they wish to submit as being the one they're going to be compliant with. CMS isn't telling you what that decision support rule should be. They're just saying it needs to be associated with a high priority of that hospital in their treatment. And what's the measure? You have to implement one. You only have to implement one clinical decision support rule. There are no exclusions, although in a way they do qualify by saying you can't use drug-drug or drug allergy checks as a clinical decision support rule, because that's a separate core objective that you already have to meet. This is a yes or no attestation stating that you've implemented this rule for the length of the reporting period. Key there is it can't be on the last day of the reporting period or the midpoint of the reporting period. It's got to be implemented day one of the reporting period chosen by the hospital for the 90 days. So it's got to be there starting during the reporting period, that rule. So as I said, CMS is leaving it up to the individual hospital to determine what's the appropriate decision support rule to use. As I mentioned also, drug-drug and drug allergy interaction alerts don't qualify since they're already an objective. You got to use a different decision support rule. So that's just note that. All right, moving to another of the core objectives, and that is protecting patient health information. And what we need to do here is we protect the electronic health information that's maintained by the certified EHR technology through the implementation of appropriate technical capabilities. So there's that definition of appropriate technical capabilities. And actually in the final rule for the EHR certification, the criteria to become certified for the software, there are, I believe, 8 separate certification criteria that the software has to meet in order to have appropriate technical capabilities. So that's the certification process. But here, to meet the meaningful use objective for the protected health information, what does a hospital have to do? Well, you have to conduct or review a security risk analysis, and that risk analysis has to be in accordance with 45 CFR 164.308. In other words, that particular document outlines what has to be included in the risk analysis. So it's almost like a work plan, if you will, for your risk analysis. So you have to conduct it or review, and then if you find that there are deficiencies coming out of that review, you have to correct those deficiencies as part of the overall risk management process. There's nothing that's contrary to HIPAA. I know that they've been very careful about making sure that they haven't been inconsistent with anything that's within the HIPAA rules and regulations. So, but this is separate. This is a core objective, and each hospital has to adhere to the conduct of the risk analysis. So, as I mentioned, no exclusions. And then, again, it's a yes or no attestation to this. Did you or did you not conduct or review the analysis and implement appropriate security updates as necessary to, correct any potential security deficiencies. All right. Some additional information on this. The risk analysis has to be conducted at least once prior to the end of the EHR reporting period, and you're attesting to that conduct. The testing actually could occur prior to the beginning of the EHR reporting period, so they're allowing you to get ahead of this particular requirement or objective by conducting that risk analysis before your 90-day compliant period, actually reporting period, starts. And a security update would be required if any deficiencies were identified during the risk analysis. In other words, a security update would be making changes. And those changes could be to software, it might be procedural, workflow, could be training as well, to ensure that those deficiencies have been addressed. And all of that needs to be completed prior to the end of the reporting period. All right, so here we have the menu objective, and that is patient lists. And what's required here? So we need to be able to generate lists of patients by specific conditions. So patient segmentation, if you will, by condition, specific condition. Again, for the intent of addressing quality, reducing any disparities in the way that the patients are treated, research or outreach. So those would be the reasons or the uses of these patient lists. And so in order to meet this, we need to be able to generate a list of patients by specific conditions, and there are no exclusions. So the specific attestation that you're asked to make is, have you been able to do this, generate this list for at least one report by specific condition for the reporting period? And that doesn't seem to be a terribly difficult requirement to attest to. And my guess is that that one will be fairly straightforward for hospitals to meet. So some additional information about this one. It doesn't. They're not telling the hospital which specific condition has to be reported, just that you can do that. They're, again, allowing the hospital or critical access hospital to determine what report. And again, the report only needs to include those patients whose electronic, whose health information are maintained in electronic EHR technology. Okay, so that I think covers